Hey, welcome to the show. It's Wednesday. My name is Mike Phillips. This is the Leadership Toolkit, as you know, your definitive leadership growth podcast. And I got a really unique show today. I'm excited about this show today. I've got a panel of leadership wizards, as I'm going to call them, getting ready to come on the show. So I've been through just over 120 shows talking about leadership, talking about entrepreneurship, business growth. What are character traits? What are the things we should do? What are the things we shouldn't do? And this is one of those shows where I sort of unpack some of those things. And so I picked a few things, a few themes on leadership that it's like, hey, these are some of these things that we don't often see. And I'm very blessed to have a great group of leadership friends and mentors, sort of a sounding board that I bounce stuff off of from time to time. And as I was getting ready to go live on this show, I said, hey, I'm just going to go through and jump in on these. And I had a couple guys said, hey, let's do a panel. Both of them have been friends of the show. They've been on the show. So I'm super excited to have both Mike Ashie and Jim Burgoon joining me today on the show. So welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So I would like to just, if you'd give the 1 or 2 minute elevator pitch each, and we'll sort of sit in this show and just have a panel discussion, but I'm going to give you guys both some time to share with the audience. I know, Mike's, I think, streaming to his YouTube channel as well, which is awesome. You can check out Leadership with Mike. You got Lead with Jim. Jim, you've just done some rebranding, which looks awesome on your show. So if you guys, as we're talking to, want to send me your links in the private chat, I'll make sure to share those both in the description later and then as we go through the show. But if we would, let's just start off. And Mike, I'm going to start with you. Just share real quick the 2 minute elevator pitch. What's your background? I know you just had a business that you sold recently, so you've got a lot of exciting stuff going in your life. So if you would share that real quick.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So I have the leadership channel, Leadership with Mike. And I've been running that for a few years. We've got a few subscribers. I try to help new managers kind of get their ducks in a row, their feet wet, as the saying goes. But as you mentioned, Mike, recently I was a founding member of a company called One Click, and very proud to say that within 6 months of launching to the public, we were quickly acquired. And now we're focused back on the channel, and with that founding team, we're coming up with the next idea. Can't hear you, Mike.
I was saying phenomenal, and I forgot I muted myself. See, that's why I never mute anybody. I warned you guys before the show. I said I don't mute anyone because I'll forget. So do you have ideas as to what the next thing is?
We're kicking some ideas around, but we're keeping it under our hat for now.
All right, fair enough. Well, I won't press you on that then, just because we're friends. So, and then also I've got Jim, who runs the channel Lead with Jim as well. So Jim, if you would give us the elevator pitch, and I'll try to remember to unmute myself after on yours.
No problem. Well, thanks for having me on the show again. This has been an incredible show over the years. For all you guys, I am Jim, and I am actually in charge of Lead with Jim. I'm a podcaster of the Unshakable Life podcast, as well as the channel Lead with Jim. And on the channel, what we do is we're focusing on personal development that actually works for Christians. We're working really solidly with faith-based, with really getting into what causes growth, what actually you need to do to grow, and then get through all the little mire and the muck on all the other nonsense out there that people tell you that isn't true.
Awesome. So that was quicker than I expected. So,
yeah.
Hey, that's fine. Well, so one of the things, like I said, we talk a lot on this show, and I had shared just a moment beforehand with Mike as we were talking. I think so often people that are in leadership roles or people that want to be in leadership roles, they'll tune into a podcast like this. They'll tune into a channel like one of ours. And what happens is, even inadvertently, people see the end result, right? They see, oh man, Mike's got all these subscribers, man, Jim's been doing this forever and he's coaching people, and they see the end piece. And so often there are so many building blocks that go into building a channel, building a coaching business, becoming a manager, becoming a leader, running a business, running a team. There's all of these different angles. And so the things that I want to get into today are sort of those unseen pieces, and just have a conversation, guys. And I really appreciate you jumping in and having a panel conversation here. But things like, what are the invisible pieces of leadership? One of the things that I mentioned, and we'll get into each of these, sort of how consistency trumps intensity over time. Talking about having courageous conversations. Mike and I, you and I have had that conversation multiple times, both on my show and privately. We've had some of those where you've had to smack me in the face or vice versa. Talking about leading through uncertainty, because we are living in some uncertain times right now. Jim, I've seen you put out quite a bit of stuff, especially, some of the Christian content, that it's like, hey, we know that there's one thing that can provide certainty, peace, remove anxiety and fear, and that is God, right? And so talking about some of that leading through uncertainty. And then also, just as Mike was mentioning, hey, they had an exit from a startup, talking about sort of that leadership legacy, or legacy leadership. So I want to start at the top here, and I'm curious to chat with both of you guys. What are some moments, because I think when we talk about invisible leadership, that first thing that I brought up, there is so much that defines leaders that are not the public wins. The public sees us when we're sharing the result. People tune into a podcast or they watch a YouTube channel and they go, oh man, that is so awesome. Yeah, I want to be able to repeat that. But I'm curious, maybe you guys could share some times, and I know I have some, that would be those one-off, just those silent moments that are private choices that were character developing, that helped to develop your leadership. And I'm just curious if you guys have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. I think it comes down to working on yourself for yourself. Before starting Leadership with Mike, I worked at the Toronto International Airport.
Mm-hmm.
I got overlooked 7 times for a promotion. I was ticked, not happy at all. I believed I had the skill set. I believed I had the relationships. I believed I had the full package of what they were looking for. And, hindsight 2020, what I didn't have was a relationship with the hiring manager, or a good relationship with the hiring manager.
Mm-hmm.
But that aside, I feel weird, but not to toot my own horn, but I said, screw it. I know leadership. I believe I can manage. I believe I have the know-how. So I stopped waiting for permission, and I just started my Leadership with Mike. That turned into be a blessing, tenfold, because 2 years, I think, after I started the channel, COVID hit, and COVID did not do well for the airport industry or the airline industry. So I lost my job. My wife and I had a heart to heart, and we said, we're going all in on Leadership with Mike, which, at the time wasn't bringing in a lot of money, but I was feeling good about doing it. I was slowly growing my audience. Fast forward just a little bit, and I meet these kids that are, have a tech startup where I'm a content creator. They were looking for content. We started talking back and forth, and one thing leads to another. We start jumping in to AI, and they're like, Mike, we think we need you here full time as a content creator. Well, that's great in and of itself. But then I took the opportunity and shared, not necessarily getting paid more, but I stepped up and I became the head of strategy for this AI company. This all happened because I was leading myself and my journey without waiting for permission. I just started to do that. And I find, people will say, oh, you're so lucky. Luck, in my opinion, doesn't happen unless you've put in the work. So it's very much starting with yourself and putting yourself in a position where you can take advantage of opportunities that come your way. And next thing you know, you're lucky. And 6 months later, you've got an exit, that went very, like, so much faster than anyone could have expected. So yeah, you got to work on yourself and give yourself time in the process, in the trenches, to screw up, to learn things, to pivot, whatever your path becomes. But I don't think you get the opportunity if you don't take advantage of other opportunities.
Well, and I think the thing that, and this ties in exactly what I'm talking about here, when it's those invisible moments. You're saying, hey, I'm taking these opportunities. There are times you disappeared and were very quiet in our group. And I was like, hey, Mike, you okay? And you're like, yeah, I'm just working on myself, just doing my thing.
Yep.
And, Jim, you've done that a lot also over the last couple of years, where you had a direction, you had where you were headed. And then over, I would probably the last 2-3 years, man, I've watched you as a person grow astronomically. And it's one of those things that you sit and, people will weigh, content creators on, well, how many followers or how many likes and how that, and we all jokingly or lovingly say, well, we're not worried about vanity metrics, but there's some level that we are. But coming to things like consistency and doing the right things over and over again, that's one of the things that I've seen you really take hold of. Jim, can you expand what changed for you in your journey? What was like, hey, all of a sudden I'm going to go after this and do this?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot that went on. We talk about invisible leadership, and invisible leadership is just character development. It's the things that we do in the dark that nobody sees. It's the things that when the lights are off, we're still doing the thing. And so my whole life, I have taken every situation, whether good or bad, as opportunities to either strengthen my character or reveal something that needed to be changed.
Sure.
And it was somewhere around, I don't know, 2017. So 2017, I'm in a growing church. I'm living at this place of success. I had a decent job, decent money. The church I was planning was growing, all this stuff. But my wife was sick and she was getting sicker. And I actually had to make a hard decision because, we talk about the invisible leadership. The invisible leadership is made in hard decisions. And I had to step away from all of that. So I step away and we went into some really hard seasons. During that time, it was, obviously the pandemic and everything else that came through. But I had gone into where I was doing my thing. I hired a couple coaches. We were working on the YouTube. We were working on content. I thought I was doing good. Then I kept burning out, and I kept burning out because I was chasing an expectation, not a reality. And this is where the character comes in, because we chase expectations of other people or what other people have projected on us because we think that is what success means or that'll make us feel better. And what it was doing was it was draining me more as I was trying to navigate my wife's illnesses, my illnesses, losing my mom and my sister in 2024. And all of this was happening. And so I finally got to the place where I was like, what do I really want to do in life? And that's a communicator. That's exactly what I want to do, and coach and help and, things like that. But I was like, what is sustainable? Because I kept doing things that was unsustainable because I was trying to live to a level that other people were living at, that they were like, yeah, I do the Gary Vee thing. I do 400 pieces of content a day and all this. And I was trying to do that. But the problem with that is they all have teams. And I didn't realize that at first. And then I was like, there's no way. And then my autoimmune kicked in and then burnout kicked in. And I was like, what's sustainable? So I started my podcast. And I was like, let me be consistent. And I haven't missed a week in 60. Episode 60 just dropped. I've never missed a week.
Nice.
And so about a month or two ago, I said, well, what can I do that is going to be legitimately able to be sustainable? So I went ahead and I'm building my website. I was like, oh, I need that. And so now I rebranded my YouTube channel to be like, what do I like talking about that's convergence of the chaos of my mind that would be beneficial, that would help people grow, and is something that I enjoy? Thus, I was like, well, leadership development, personal development, let's talk about that actually works, because I've been through enough chaos and trauma and challenges to know what kind of works and what doesn't. And so I said, you know what, we're going to launch this out. We're not going to try to do everything at once. I'm going to have to make tough decisions. And this was hard for me, was to say, okay, don't do 50 things, do one, and do one okay.
And do one really well. Yeah.
Do one really well. So I did that with the podcast. I was 60 weeks in and I'm like, all right, I did that well. Now what can I do? So I started adding shorts. And in a few weeks, I'm going to start adding an extra like YouTube specific videos for my channel. And then after that, I'm going to start taking clients again.
That's good, man. So here's a couple of things that I'm going to transition to sort of my next question, because I would like to get through all of these, and we may run, hopefully you guys have the time, but a couple things. One, early shout out to Mike Ashie from Orchard Man, says, learned so much on the toxic boss experience. So thanks for changing my life. That's a huge deal. Like and Mike, you said this earlier, you were like, and I know he said this comment a minute ago, I was just bouncing around and wanted to finish the thought. Here's what's crazy. You had commented, you said, hey, I was doing a lot of the inner work. I was working on myself. I was doing these things. Well, while you're doing that, and here's a perfect example. You have somebody watching your channel that you're changing them with you. And that's one of those, to me, it's one of those unseen moments in leadership, right? Fast forward to, I don't know when you dropped that toxic boss video, a year ago, 2 years ago.
Awesome.
Fast forward to the podcast conversation now, and you've got someone saying, hey, this changed my life. Mm-hmm. That's phenomenal. And so
it's very powerful too, because here's what, again, talking about what people don't see.
Yeah.
When I started my leadership channel, remember, I was denied a promotion 7 times. That means all of my friends, all my peers knew that I was denied leadership, title.
Right.
Well, who are you to start a YouTube channel? Are you an idiot? Why would you think that you're the guy to do that? Why would you think that you, a guy who is throwing bags, who can't get a leadership position at the airport, should be head of strategy of a tech company? I'm not. Again, we don't need to ask for permission. We have to be able to tune up the laughter. And some of it was all in good fun, and I probably would have done it to somebody else. So it's not like I'm crying saying, oh, woe was me, they picked on me. But to be able to go through that training camp I put myself through, while people are seriously mocking me, while they're jokingly mocking me, when there's that friction, seeing a comment like this saying that, something that I did or something that we've done or we've discussed has changed somebody's life that I've never met. You don't get like, yeah, I've got chills. That's it's phenomenal. Very touching. It's very important for people to see that.
So here's the takeaway, and this is what I want people to hear. And I encourage people, when you're listening to podcasts, if you're listening on Spotify, if you're watching on YouTube, and again, do us a favor, drop some comments. If you have questions for any one of us, drop them in the comments section. If throw some little strong arms. I've been listening to Chad Prather. He does dancing bananas in the sidebar all the time. So I got to come up with some sort of emoji, but throw stuff in there. That's how this podcast grows. That's how any of us grow on YouTube, is you gotta make those comments, ask those questions. There's nothing we're going to shy away from, especially with this group of guys. Right. And so here's the takeaway from that first part. And I want people to hear this and maybe jot it down, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, if you're listening here on YouTube. Both of these men and myself, I've experienced this myself many times. True leadership is built in the shadows long before you're going to shine in the spotlight, right? It is, you're Mike just said it there on that tail end. It's like, you go, who are you? You're building yourself up. You're building other people up. You're connecting with people. You're doing this. Could be months, could be years, could be decades before you get that spotlight shown on you. So the thing is, there's no replacement for continuing to just do the right thing and keep working on yourself and keep moving forward. That also leads me to something. This was a nice segue, Jim, because you were talking about, hey, being consistent and continuing to do one thing really well. And I think I'm going to give you the takeaway for this one early and I have some of these jotted down. I wanted to be prepared for the show today, but this second part of invisible leadership is that consistency is greater than it always trumps intensity. And so, repeating the fundamentals is what creates excellence. And the thing is, people get burnt out on the fundamentals. Jim, you said it earlier, is it's like, well, I've been doing this same thing, so I got to do the next big thing. And then this really grandiose thing, because I got to build this and I got to grow this and it's got to be massive. And that's some crap that we've made up in our own heads. The people that are the most successful are the ones, and I have this statement I've said this on many podcasts, I've said it on my website and channels. People, if you want to excel and grow the most, you have to be brilliant at the basics. You have to be really good at the basic things. And then Jim, you made the comment earlier, and I want to go to you on this, is like you were saying, hey, I just focused on getting really good at one thing. I did 60 episodes of a podcast before I did the next thing. So were there ever times during those 60 episodes that you got exhausted, that you wanted to quit, that you were just like, I got to do the next thing? And how did you overcome that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things that I think realism of a lot of this is that life is still happening while you're still building. And like, my wife has still got her illnesses. I still have my illnesses and what I deal with and all these things. And so life is going to life, whether you like it or not. The reality of it is can you create the system, or at least the commitment, that when life happens, you're still going to continue? And so like, there has been weeks, probably more than I like to admit, where I'm finishing up editing and all the other 9 yards of my podcast, probably a couple hours right before I'm releasing it. And so, but there's been times where there was one time, I think it was about a month ago, I was like, I'm tired, I'm fatigued, I can't do this. And my podcast was released one day later. And I've had to be able to embrace the flexibility that my goal was one a week. My commitment was to try to make it every Tuesday, but there's been a few Tuesdays that actually ended up being Wednesdays. And I had to sit with that and be okay with that, because I have this very high expectation, this very high like drive with a body that doesn't support it. And I've got to really, and I had to really accept that and accept the changing of that, you know? And so that was really hard, and it does take a psychological toll, but now I'm getting back into just accept, not only the acceptance, but the reality of it, that I'm not broken in the midst of it, that I'm okay. It's just the reality I have to do to create, but I'm still going to create, because I create because I love to create, and I create because I know what I create is going to help somebody.
Well, and I think you dropped a tidbit there, and I always want to dive into these. And I know you guys have been guests on the show, you've watched the show, and I try to pull things out. I know if I'm learning something, that the audience is learning something. And one of the things that, this is one of those unspoken truths that Jim just said. We have to create wins for ourselves.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that because he said, well, I wanted to do a podcast a week. The first rule was, I want to do a podcast every Tuesday. But then sometimes you pigeonhole yourself, right? You're boxed in. Well, I got to do it Tuesdays. Now, for me, I do it every Wednesdays because I already know what my schedule is, and that was how I committed it. And it's a live show. Jim saying, hey, you know, I wanted to do one every Tuesday, and then sometimes it was a Wednesday, and you do a recorded and released podcast, right?
Right.
So little different, but just by making that small tweak, you start to wire yourself for wins. And I want people to hear that, because it's like he said, okay, well, I just want to get a show out a week. That gives you 7 whole days to get it figured out, right? And I think so often as leaders, as employees, as business people, as whatever, somebody gives us these goals, right? That's problem number one, is somebody gives us the goal instead of us owning the goal, right? But we either get or adopt or create a goal for ourselves, and we say, well, this is how I'm going to do it, and then we fall so in love with the plan that now I got to do it every Tuesday. Well, it's a win-lose. If all of a sudden you don't release it on Tuesday, now you're wiring your brain that it says, well, I failed, I screwed this up. Versus I released one this week, that's a win. You're wiring yourself for those wins. Right. And so I want people to hear that. Like that's one of those just little moments, and you're saying, hey, like, it's just normal to you, but that is a huge just takeaway tidbit here that people need to hear. When you're setting up goals, what's the win? I know I'm rambling on for a minute, but I'll share this example, because I'd liken it to the car business, like anybody in sales, right? Everyone knows I came up in the car business. In sales, it was always, I got to sell a car today. I got to sell a car today. I got to sell a car today. Well, who's in control of that? It's you, right? And the consumer. So you at best have 50% of the control.
Right.
And so what you got to do is come up with different things of, well, I'm going to make 50 outbound phone calls today in sales. I have control over those actions. I can make the 50 outbound calls. I can't control if anyone answers. I can't control if they'll set an appointment. I can't control if they'll come in and buy a car. But how do you wire your brain and set that up to win? I think that's a really important lesson people need to hear from that.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
piece right there.
And if I can jump in for 1 second with it, just a statement real quick.
Yeah.
Is we make decisions based on shame. Like if we don't make the deadline, if we don't do the thing, if we don't get the stuff. So we're actually causing these shame cycles or these shame spirals instead of like, what if we made decisions in a healthy way that promote, this instead of shame, that promote joy, that promotes fulfillment, that promotes impact, as opposed to if I don't, I'm trash. If I don't, I'm not a good salesman. If I don't, I'm not a good leader.
Right.
So that was part of the mental shift that I had to make, was instead of being shame-based, I had to say, what would be the healthiest for me? Go ahead, Mike. You were going to say something,
Mike? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's two things. One is, and this is, I don't know where this came from for myself, but I've said it to my family, my kids especially. We got to give ourselves some grace. And I'm not a one to talk about grace, but it's really been, I don't know, coming to my head often. My wife gets stressed out about things. My friends get stressed out about things. Okay, but give yourself some grace, because there is a lot of pressure in this world. We all have different pressures, but they're all very important to us. And sometimes having an outside voice saying, just give yourself that grace. You're doing okay. I find that our leadership group for myself has really helped me see a lot of wins that I've never seen. Working with the One Click team, they lifted me up to a level that I never saw. Not that I didn't see it in myself, but they're like, Mike, but you did this and you did this. And oh my God, you did. And I'm like, oh, snap. Right. So it's having people around you that feel comfortable enough to share the goods and the bads. But, with you guys and our other members of our group, I've got all these wins that I didn't register. And that helps me to start to see them a little bit better, a little bit clearer. And I think that's a great thing to have. Little assistance.
No, and you're spot on, Grace. And for anybody that's not familiar, we hear that a lot. And I don't think it even registered with me till probably 4 or 5 years ago. That really, what you got to understand is grace is one of those things that cannot be earned. It's just that gift of compassion, and you can't earn your way into more grace. It's like, you just have to be kind. You just have to be courteous. You just have to be compassionate. If you would do it with other people, why not do it with yourself? I think you're spot on, Mike. So kind of the closing takeaway from this section where we're talking about consistency, intensity. Here's what I would encourage people to write down. Like, intensity impresses people because they see it and you're in there and you're like, bro, we got to do this. We're going to build a YouTube channel and have 1 million subscribers. But wait, there's more. And people get all excited about that. And they're like, wow, that's awesome. That intensity will impress people for a time. But we saw it even earlier with the comment from Orchard Man, right? Consistency impacts them. Intensity impresses, consistency impacts. So be consistent in what the stuff you do, because it won't just impact you, it'll impact others. Moving to my next point, and I'll have all these laid out in the description so that you can follow them. Again, please do me a favor, guys, please throw some comments in there, throw some questions in there. Throw some strong arm emojis in there. I don't know. We'll go with something, but and certainly please, throw likes on the show and share the podcast. That is one of the ways that we trigger the algorithm and we allow shows like this to grow. And the whole motivation behind this show, when I started this a couple of years ago, is simply, how do we impact at least one person? Not one leader, not one business person, not one male or female. How can we impact at least one person? And like we saw earlier from Mike's channel, and I've had numerous people reach out, and it is such a blessing to hear back when people that you may have never met, they say, hey, I listened to this episode, right? I heard this comment, or I did this thing. There it is. Lead with Jim, throw the strong arms in the emojis in the side. I guess that's going to be my emoji now. So one of the things that Mike, Ashie, and I want to go to you to start off this one, is having tough and courageous conversations. And it's not about eloquence. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Mike. It's not about tempering yourself. Yes, it's being kind, but that's one of the things. When you're having a hard conversation, it is kind to be truthful and real with the person. And people have got to understand that every great culture, every great work culture, every great family culture, all of those, anything that is worth growing and having, the biggest growth happens when you have courageous conversations. We'll call them courageous conversations or tough conversations. Hi, Christina. She goes, the way you got to give the strong arm in the side. That's our new emoji for, at least for today. So, you got to understand that courageous conversations and being real with somebody doesn't divide teams. It defines them and it helps them grow. And Mike, I think on the first show you were on with me, you were on like show 2, 3, 4, or early on with me, man. And, that was one of the things that you brought up, is sometimes you got to have these. So let me ask you, how do you start a conversation that you need to have, but it's uncomfortable?
My biggest thing that I lean on is that let's say, Mike, I need to have a conversation with you.
Okay.
I respect you. I want to keep that in my head. If I respect you, I want the best for you. So even though this is going to be awkward, I'm probably not going to say the right things. My intentions are true. And it's because I have respect for you that I want to bring this to you. When I'm looking at conversations, that's the framework that I'm putting it in. Not in the Mike's going to be really ticked off with me, or this is going to hurt his feelings. It may. But I also, at least in my circle of friends, I have people around me that know that my intentions are for the best. And when I'm saying something, like I'm a clown, I'll bust your, I'll be annoying. But at the same time, when it's time to be serious, when it's time to have a conversation, I really want you to know that I respect you and that it's coming from a good, wholesome place. And when leaders can do that with their teams, I think you're going to get so much further ahead. It's not about spreadsheets. It's not about, whether it was a great fourth quarter or not. Leadership is about people. And if you want your people to be doing a great job, then you need to lead them. And sometimes that means you have to have hard conversations to help get them on track. Or hard conversations, meaning they want to bring something to you. And you have to say, they respect me enough to bring this to me, so I must give it a chance. I got to let it land, even if it's uncomfortable. I would say especially if it's uncomfortable, because for someone to bring a concern, let's call it, to you as a leader, that takes a lot of oomph. Assuming they're not doing it to be a loudmouth or to cause a scene, assuming that, we're all doing this for the betterment of those around us and for the company, whatever it might be.
Sure.
It's a difficult thing to do. But I think that when you can get through it and you hold the fact that, okay, I respect this person, or this person is saying it because they respect me, I can appreciate that. Let me reframe this, or let me at least clear my mind so I can appreciate what's coming or what I'm delivering. I think that really sets the tone for how you lead moving forward. Being people knowing that, one, when you come to them with something that is not going to be comfortable, you're coming from a place of respect and trust. And that if you're on the receiving end, that as a leader, that you are going to be respectful of your team's thought process. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just means that you're going to be respectful, because it's not easy having these difficult conversations.
Absolutely. Jim, any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of this stuff, hard for me, is almost like subjective because like it's what we're talking about is more into the emotional side of things. Because if just take a bodybuilder, I can lift a certain amount of weight, but if you have a professional bodybuilder who can lift 10 times what I can lift, it's easy for him, hard for me. So I think I love what Mike's saying because that mutual respect, that mutual thing, the way I reframe it, because Mike tends to be a very dominant leader and I love him for it. I am not. Yeah, you got the dominant, like, boom, no getter, go getter guy. I tend to be a little bit more on the other side of it where I'm not going to be as dominant. Matter of fact, I don't like conflict as much. Not saying anybody does. So the way I have to reframe it for me in the realities that I face is this conversation is neither hard nor easy, but we will both be better for it.
That's
And
good.
I think that's for me because like when I go into those things, whether it be with my wife, with my clients, with, the people I lead, it's always like, okay, we ran into a challenge. How can we get over the challenge? Because as leaders, we need to be problem solvers, not problem finders, right? Everybody has a problem. We can say that all day. But here's the problem we ran into. Now, what are we going to do in order to get through this? Like, let's take a look at this. Now, to unravel that, they've got to unravel the emotion of it because here's the reality. Offense is a choice. And if I say something that you consider hard, you get the microsecond choice of whether you're offended or not. If you choose to be offended, then this conversation could go really bad, especially if you get offended and then I get defensive off of your offense. Now we're in an argument and now we have a problem. And what could have been impactful for both of us is now, challenging the relationship. And so at the end of the day, and I'll end with this one. So at the end of the day, when we go into these things, we have to say, okay, this is the problem we're facing. We're going to solve this together. And I love what Mike was saying, the mutual respect. Like, I absolutely love that. And we have mutual respect to it. This is what we have to do. Let me present to you where the challenge is, and then let's have this conversation on how we're going to fix this or how we're going to get through this. And let's make sure that we are on same terms and we could talk about this versus, having our own thoughts in our head. But let's set some ground rules. This is not meant to be offensive. This is not meant to be anything. I know you're going to have some emotional challenges and some things you're working through, just like I am. But let's be mature enough to make sure that at the end of the day, like I think, Mike, you all said that we love each other, we respect each other, but we have an issue that we need to solve together and we'll both be better for it.
Absolutely. Kind of in closing on this part, one of the things that I'm going to give folks a tactical piece here, because I think Jim said it well too, is, nobody likes not nobody. Some people thrive on conflict. Okay. But in general, the best leaders do not thrive on conflict. The best leaders thrive on seeing other people grow. They're goal driven. They're all of these things. Two tidbits here. One, I would not use the sandwich method when giving feedback and tough conversations. And what that means I'm going to pay you a really good compliment. Oh man, you're such a great person. I love this thing. Then I'm going to tell you this crappy thing that you do and hammer on it. But I really love you because you're such a great person. Don't do that. What I would do, and this is from my own experience, is my recommendation. If you're going to have those conversations, a lot of times people already know it's coming. They're waiting for it. And if they don't, that's your fault as a leader. Let me tell you that. Okay. Absolutely. As a leader and manager, if people are just unaware that you're frustrated or that something's not being accomplished and so forth, that's a communication failure on your part as the leader. So when you're going to have a conversation, and one of these courageous conversations, a difficult conversation, however you want to label it, I like to, if it's, me and Jim getting together or me and Mike getting together, the first thing I may sit down with them and I will just tell them very directly, hey, listen, we need to have a conversation regarding your productivity. We need to have a conversation about your activities at work. We need to have a conversation about whatever it may be very direct. And then my next question is always, so can I have permission to speak freely to give you some feedback?
Yes.
Because if they say yes, you're in. If they're
on.
Like, yeah, well, and I'm not saying, but then you don't have to sandwich it together. You don't have to coddle them. or say all the niceties just for the sake of, oh, I don't want to upset somebody. It's just, hey, we need to have a conversation about this. Can I have permission to speak freely with you about it? And if you're coming from a position, like Mike said, of trust and respect, which should be your default mode as a leader, might I remind you, people don't have to earn respect. Respect is a default mode, in my opinion. You can lose respect, but it should be freely given. Just
Agreed.
My 2 cents.
It's a good 2 cents.
So sort of finishing there, like I said, those courageous conversations, that should not be divisive of teams. That should help define your team and help bring people to the next level. Next thing I wanted to talk about today, and I'm trying to keep these to about 10-minute segments as we're having these conversations. And this is, I think, a big one right now, is just leading through uncertainty. One of the things that I want people to understand right now, it's almost a default mode. There's so much uncertainty in the world, whether you're in the US, like Jim and myself, Canada, you're in Canada, Mike. I've had some folks on the show from Australia. Like there's uncertainty all over the place. And so for me as a leader, I want to be a place of clarity and certainty. And so I think, when we're talking about, and I've had some amazing people on the show. Actually, just last week, I'm going to reference her, Lena Wilson, phenomenal lady. Her and I were talking about, and her job, her coaching specialty is coaching people through uncertain times. She's a transition agent. So people that are leaders or executives and so forth, and they have to be able to navigate from point A to point F, right? The F stands for fun, folks, right? But she had some really good points on, like, hey, you got to anchor your teams by being calm, having clarity, and having communication first, so you can help define direction when things are uncertain. So let me, and either one of you guys could go first. We can have the conversation. I can call on one of you, but when you have some uncertain times, let's say there's change in management at work, change in overall philosophy at work, change in goal set at work. Mike, I'll go to you first, because you've been through a lot of this with your AI company. All of a sudden it's like, hey, we thought we were going this direction, and then these guys are coming in and asking us to do something else. How do you deal with some of that uncertainty from a leadership perspective?
I think the first thing is realizing that every moment is uncertain. There's no, like, I've never felt like, oh, this is a sure thing. Whether that be in relationships, whether that be at work, whether that be just life in general. I think that if you can, as a leader, you can stay open-minded, and you can just, I think, Mike, you said, it's staying calm. We had, while I was at the company, like they started, let's say 6 months before me, there was 3, maybe 4 major pivots as to what the company was. But we had in my opinion, such a strong leadership team that nobody was frazzled. Nobody was left with questions unanswered. Leadership, myself included, was very clear as to why this pivot needs to happen. What's happening in the SaaS space, and then what's happening in the AI space, which is moving so fast, which creates a huge opportunity for the team that we had. So a lot of it came down to the leadership team first knowing the direction or the pivot that needs to be made and why, and then clearly communicating that with the team. There's not, from what I was able to pick up, there was not one person on the team that was frazzled, that was lost, that was confused, that, got emotional because we've totally changed. Like we were we were initially started as a social media platform for content creators in education, to being able to analyze online insights. Those don't connect, but we never had the team become disconnected because of these pivots. So it really comes down to the leadership just keeping themselves together, having an understanding, not ruffling feathers until it's time to have that conversation, having the conversation, giving opportunity for your team members to express their concerns, their thoughts, their opinions, and really just talking it out and then showing why it's such a great opportunity. I think, there's a lot of chaos in the world, but I think that each individual piece of chaos has an opportunity for someone to really benefit. And if you can keep that open mind when there's a change, knowing, like, I was not comfortable losing my job at the airport. I was there for 17 years. That was not a comfortable spot. But by keeping it cool and calm, as cool as I could, and calm, and working with my wife to work on it, what's the plan? What's the move? And talking it out and making that decision made everything so much easier. So really, just again, nothing is going to go perfect, at least not for long. There's always going to be a hiccup. Just be prepared, in the sense of mentally prepared. Something's going to change. I think you guys would know better than me, but somewhere in the Bible it says this too shall pass. I really lean on that.
Yeah,
good
absolutely.
And bad.
Well, and here's the thing. This is one of those tidbits I'm gonna pull out, and then we got a question in the sidebar I want to come back to too. You said, hey, when there was this time of turmoil, lost my job, you weren't just communicating and learning with yourself, but this sort of leading through uncertainty applies with your family. You said, hey, I had these conversations with my wife. They're serious conversations. Like, this is applicable not just at work. It's applicable to your family. It's applicable to your kids. It's applicable, like, everybody in some right is a leader in some area of their life. So you need to take that. And here's something that I want people to hear. And this is one of those write downs, in my opinion. People don't need a perfect plan. There's never going to be a perfect plan. You commented, Mike, oh, it's constant chaos. There's always not constant chaos, there's always uncertainty, right? People don't need a perfect plan. What they need is a present leader.
Yes.
They need somebody they can lean on. And
so I want to, with clarity, because absolutely, there's so many moving parts in every aspect of your life, that if, again, like you said, Mike, it could be with your family. My wife can provide me clarity in a certain aspect, or I provide her clarity, and she's like, okay, the sky's not falling. Right. You're right. Like, sometimes we have to get out of our own heads and follow somebody that can keep it calm, cool, and collected.
So I want to jump into this question, and the side from CBC says, it's good information. My question is, do we need to ask permission? So this is sort of in our courageous conversation segment. Do we need to ask permission from staff to give critical feedback? What if they say no? I have a response to this, but I'm curious what you're going to, and Mike, you had responded, you said, we take feedback, consider it, and share the decision.
Yes. So here's how I look at it. And this is just between friends, folks.
Yep.
When I'm working with a team, especially a larger team, I look at them. This is not to be disrespectful, but I look to a group of people as children. They're not needing me as a father, but they're needing guidance. They're needing the opportunity to be heard. I listen to my kids. I'm the dad. I know what we're doing today, but I will always listen to my kids, and I will take their feedback. And then either I pivot and say, you know what, that's a great idea, we can add that. Or I say, I hear you, I appreciate that, but we're going to go ahead this way. But I want everybody to know that they're heard. I'm not about taking a vote for most times. The decision is made where the decision is made. But I'm 100% open to listening to to critical feedback. I'm not open to listening to just criticism and just bitching because somebody's used to doing it for 20 years this way and they don't want to change.
Sure.
I want to hear what could happen, because when we make decisions, especially at work, leadership sometimes are a little bit removed from the process. So I want to hear from my team, especially those, boots that have boots on the ground. They probably have a little bit better relationship with the customer or with the process. So fill me in. Yes, maybe we're making this change, but maybe something that they say that's, critical feedback is actually critical to making the change successful. So we would do more harm if we didn't listen to the team. Again, I'm not necessarily asking permission. Can we do this? In my opinion, the way I see it in my head, we're doing this. I'd love your feedback. And I'll wade through the bitching and moaning, and there's going to be some gems where I haven't considered or upper management hasn't considered, and it's worth having a conversation about. So I think there's great value in asking.
And real quick, and then we've got one more topic to go through, but Jim, curious of your thoughts on that question. Said, do we need to ask permission from staff to give critical feedback? And then I'll give you a 30-second pitch on my thoughts too.
No, you don't need to ask for permission. I mean, obviously there's an unspoken contract that if you work for me, that there will be criticism or not criticism, but like feedback, whatever you want to call it. But instead of saying, and I love the concept of, hey, do I have your permission? That is a very coaching statement. You'll find that in coaching all over the place. Do I have your permission to coach you? You know, those kind of things. One thing you can also do or say is, hey, listen, let's partner on fixing this issue. And instead of saying permission, we're using words like partner, because now you're inviting them to be part of the conversation, but you're still going to move forward. Because if they say no, they're still working for you and you still have to have the conversation. I mean, it halts business. It halts a lot of things. So now I need to maybe shift it, if that's the culture in your business, as say, hey, let's partner together on solving this solution. But first, before we get into your side of the feedback, I got to present to you the problem, you know, things like that.
I like that. This is where the type A in me comes out. And I'm going to say this when we're talking about, because maybe I'm reading too much into the question, CBC, but you're saying asking permission to give critical feedback. My statement would still start with, hey, you know, can I speak freely here? And if they say no, and you're saying they say no, the first thing that goes off in my head is then they're not the right fit to be on my team. And that's pretty cut and dry to me. If somebody's not open to feedback, now they could have something going on in their life. There could be something else. But at that point, the next thing it's going to trigger for me, and this is a very business answer, is at that point, because like Jim said and Mike said, you're still going to need to provide the feedback. I'm going to get a witness. I'm just telling you how it is. That's the world we live in. I'm going to, you know, say, okay, well, that's fine. I can appreciate that you don't want to hear that. I've got something that I need to share with you, and I'm going to approach HR, or I'm going to get a witness, because that's going to, if we're talking critical feedback, that is something that needs to be had. And your only options on critical feedback are have the conversation and give them the opportunity to learn, grow, and continue to be a part of that team, or to fire them and move on to find somebody that is willing to take feedback.
Okay,
and I know that may be harsh.
No, this is totally embarrassing, because I don't know my dyslexia. I was reading the question, not listening to him. Like, oh, you know, they want to give feedback, or we're making some changes in the company.
If they're saying feedback to you,
I'm thinking totally. I'm with you. You have the opportunity to say no if I can give you feedback. But know that decision, that choice that you've made has totally pivoted our relationship.
Yeah.
We just decided to chase a rabbit. That's all.
Union rep,
that's okay.
I'm bringing in a witness, because I'm 100% on Mike Phillips' team. If you're not with us, you're against us.
Well, and like I said, I'm maybe not that hard nosed, but that's one of the things people got to understand is when it comes to critical feedback, when it comes to warnings, when it comes to consulting with people, I genuinely am coming from a place that, and you're welcome, CBC said, thanks guys, love it. So all the answers were great.
Mike's answer was useless. Thanks, Phillips.
Genuinely coming from a place of, I want them to grow. They need to take this feedback. The goal is not to let somebody go from a company or cut them from your team or move them from a department. The goal is that they grow and learn from it. Like that's always the goal. I'm also saying, CBC, that a lot can be revealed in those moments. So I know you guys are on a bit of a time limit. So we got I'm on about a 10-minute cap here at best. So last item that I want to talk about is legacy leadership. The mark you leave on people is not going to be the title. They're not going to remember you as a leader. They're going to remember, it's like somebody has said, many times before, right? People will remember the way you made them feel. People will remember the things that you did for them and with them. I remember one of my early shows with my friend Sean. He's a pastor out of Texas, and he coined the phrase. He was talking about staying hungry and humble, and those sorts of things. That's the sort of legacy that has grown from character. And so, I would challenge our listeners, and we'll get into this. We got probably 5 minutes or so to chat on this piece, but I would challenge my listeners and viewers to say, well, what will people say changed because you led them? What will have changed for them? And so I'm curious from either of you. Jim, maybe I have you start on this one. When you're talking about leading generationally, and I know that's something with that sort of with your Christian leadership background,
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts on this, on legacy leadership?
Yeah, so it's funny because I just did a virtual summit on Somebody Summit and talked about this very subject. So I think a lot of times we really get it wrong. We want to leave like different things. We want to leave money. We want to leave cars. We want to leave all this stuff. But the reality of it is at your funeral, think about it this way. At your funeral, everybody will gather. They'll say one sentence, and then they'll all eat potato salad. Why they eat potato salad at funerals, I don't know, but they'll all eat potato salad. And you know what? They may never remember you again. They may not. So the reality comes back into is the question I think you were asking is somewhat about similar, is what needs to be changed, felt, and impacted for generations to come. That means I'm leaving principles and character development and not just stuff, right? Now, I want to write 50 books before I die so that future generations have these things. And now obviously there'll be AI or whatever in the years to come, but I want to write them personally. But the legacy I'm leaving are the lessons I'm leaving to my children, like how to confront somebody in a positive or in a healthy way, how to have healthy relationships, how to lead when nobody wants you to lead, how to, show up when you don't want to show up, how to live and love consistently when everything against you is really wanting to make you bitter, So like, I know that me passing these down to my children, and, I was a teacher for 10 years. I actually taught hundreds of students, and these are the same lessons I gave them. And I'll tell you, 10, 15 years later, I have students coming back to me and they're like, I still do these things, right? Because it's the principle that you want to leave, because the principles are what's going to be legacy generators. Everything else is just going to go away. They're not even going to remember who gave it to them at some point. But are you more interested in your ego of your name being remembered, or are you more interested in your impact being remembered? And I think that's going to drive really what you do and how you do it for legacy.
Great statement there. Are you more interested in your name or your impact? Great statement there. Mike, what are your thoughts on this subject here?
Yeah, I break legacy leadership. I'm looking at it in a couple different ways. One, I'm looking at people that had an impact on me. And this is 30 years ago, 35 years ago, right? And I'm thinking, this was, teachers. This was one of my first restaurant managers that just dealt with me as a person, not as a cog in the wheel. And I felt that was very important. So now with myself, whether that be at One Click or whatever we call our new company, but also Leadership with Mike, for me, it's being able to share with people and say, listen, if you're not getting the information, if I can help you get one piece of information, I feel I've done my job. There's been many videos that I put out that don't get a lot of views, but man, do I feel good when I get that one comment that says, Mike, this is the video I was looking for. Then I step back and I say, well, who was I to really contemplate not releasing this video? It's right. Like there's information there. Maybe it didn't look, the lighting was off, whatever, but the value was there. So I'm hoping that I can impact people and, share what I think leadership is, which is just being a good person, which is a weird thing to say, but I think we need more people focused on being that than anything else. And then I look at legacy for my kids. And I want them to see their dad who was, working a 40-hour work week, blue collar, horrible hours. And he made a decision to start YouTube and then got into AI and was at the forefront of AI, so to speak. And just setting an example. So there's, like I said, there's different ways that I see it. My past, my present, and my future. And each one holds a special place in my mind for how I continue to move forward. I ain't perfect. I'm not even going to pretend. But having those ideals really helps guide you to stay a little bit closer to the right side of the road than the wrong.
I love it, guys. Man, we're at the tail end here, and I can't thank you guys enough for just being willing to jump in. Like, we have such a good
I love being
group.
here.
Yeah, well, and really just thank you, because we have a great group that trusts one another, that is as they say in Romans, iron sharpens iron, right? And we're constantly going back and forth with one another. We have that deep trust. And so I was excited. I had started to think, I'm going to go on and I'm going to talk about these 5 things, right? What are the 5, pieces of sort of invisible leadership, the things that we don't talk about, how to lead when no one's watching. And the moment I put it out there, and again, this is just for my audience, viewers and listeners, the moment I put it out there, I got a couple guys in my crew that are like, hey man, we'll jump in and talk about it with you. And it leads to such a better conversation. And just it's not about the content. It is about the impact. Both you guys are talking about the impact. It's phenomenal. So a couple of things here as we're coming here to, let's see, here down here at the end, a couple of items. First off, if you want to connect with Jim, he is on YouTube at youtube.com/lead with Jim. I always try and spell these out, especially if you're listening on Spotify or Apple later. So it's youtube.com/LEADWITHJIM, lead with Jim. You can connect with him there. Also, you can connect with Mike Ashie, Leadership with Mike. That's how we met. That was the name, or going to be the name, of my YouTube channel. I remind him of that with every conversation that we have, and he beat me to that. So it's spelled like Mike Phillips. No, I'm just kidding. It's spelled Leadership with Mike, LEADERSHIPWITHMIKE. Certainly you can connect with both of these amazing coaches and leadership trainers. Running a little over time. I know both of you guys are limited on time today, so I can't thank you enough. Any final thoughts from either or both of you on our way out, and then otherwise I'll wrap us up here at the end.
No, I think we've said a lot. I think that people just need to understand, put in the work on yourself, whether people are watching and it's embarrassing, or they're not watching and you feel like you're getting nowhere. The work on yourself is never a waste of time.
Absolutely.
Right. And I would just add, I love the get 1% better every day statement. Wherever you are in your leadership, whether you're just starting out, emerging, or you've been doing this for 25 years, just make sure that every day you wake up, you get 1% better, working on your character, your skill, and your development, and just be the leader that is worth following.
Absolutely phenomenal. So if you guys want to hang out for a minute, I'm going to go ahead and take us out. If you got to run, then I'll catch up with you in a bit. So ladies and gentlemen, that is going to bring us to a close for this episode of the Leadership Toolkit. Man, what I absolutely love this show. I love the conversations I get to, and I'm not saying that because it's my show. I'm saying it because the conversations that I get to have with people and the growth that I get, I'm sure is felt by you all in the audience. So do me a favor, please share this show with somebody that could use this information. Share the show with somebody that it will impact. Throw some thumbs up on it. Like I said, help the show grow. We'll put those muscle arms in the chat if you can do that, so that way you can that'll be, I guess, our thing for a little muscle arms. Is that a good emoji call out? So as we come to a close on this episode of the Leadership Toolkit, there's a couple of things that I want to point out. And just at the tail end here, I want to remind you all, leadership and legacy, both, they're built on one decision. They're built in connection with one person. They're built in one act of service at a time. And so it's not about having this grandiose idea or I got to have these 1,000 connections. It's what's the one thing? Who's the one person you're connecting with and impacting? And so I'll leave you with that this week, sort of a challenge, I guess, if you will, or a tool for you to use. I want you to ask this to yourself daily this week. Who did I serve today and how? And I don't often leave the questions or the assignments at the end of the podcast, but again, if you're taking notes, I would write that down. I want you to ask yourself that question daily, is just who did I serve today and how? And then when you write that down and how you serve them, watch how you start to help to grow yourself, as Mike and Jim were both saying. Watch how you start to grow yourself. And the mantra of this show is, as you grow yourself, you'll grow the people around you. So thank you, everybody, for taking the time to tune in with me and Mike and Jim. Thank you again to them. Thank you for everyone tuning in and listening to the Leadership Toolkit. Do me a favor, again, share the show. And until we speak next, stay great. We'll talk soon, everybody.